Hey guys, Greg Kamer here. Today I'm going to talk to you about geo-redundancy and specifically setting up active-active clustering for geo-redundancy. Thanks for stopping by. So in doing the active-active clustering config, it's not a ton different than what we have in the active standby. Couple things to remember that is a little different than active standby. Your licenses need to match in all of your clusters. So you'll see I have this NFC Network Fuse Cluster 2. This has all the licenses that I need. The same as here. Now there is a bit of a difference on my Network Fuse Cluster 1 here. I do have a different license for 10 gig throughput, but in our case, it's not a big deal. I just have that for testing. So anyhow, let's go ahead and get this set up. So if we go into System and then Cluster once again, now we do have to do this a bit differently than we did the last time. So we will go to Configuration and Configure once more, except this time we'll do redundancy. Make sure you do active-active. And we'll put in our information here just like normal. Now, one of the differences, you actually have to add it here, right? So we will go ahead and have Enable Config Sync on this. We'll hit OK. That's really all there is to setting it up. Now it's going to sit there and flip to the other one here. Helps if you click the button. So what we'll do is same thing here, but you'll notice it didn't automatically set it up this time, just like it does with active standby. So we'll have to do active-active here once more. Type in our password. Now we need the IP address of the other cluster. We'll add it. Now, one important thing here, you actually have to disable this sync. If you try to get it to go forward without disabling it, it won't work. So we'll go ahead and hit OK here and give this just a moment. So now, while that guy is kind of working itself out, let's go look here. Now you see it wasn't able to sync because I didn't have it configured yet. You can pre-configure it if you want for terms of this video. It's not really a big deal. We'll just go ahead and tell it to sync now. And yes, I do want to do this. Now keep in mind, in an active-active environment, you can actually independently configure both clusters. There are a couple exceptions there, but not a lot. So for example, in an active-active environment, say you have two data centers. One data center has its own radius server, the other has another radius server. So in that case, you may want to have different servers there. You may not. It just really depends on what you want. But keep in mind too, since it is active-active, you can actually have people working off of both clusters at the same time. It's not like a warm standby where active standby. This is a hot standby. It's actually not even a hot standby technically. It's up and running. So you can move zones, you can move data planes across these clusters at will as well. But it will fail over in the case of one of the data centers going down, clusters, et cetera, et cetera. It will go ahead and move all of the APs and the data planes over to it. So one thing to keep in mind, and we'll explore this a little bit more in the video later. If you want to fail back, it's not as seamless as a process as it was with active standby, because the whole point with an active standby, the standby is not supposed to be permanent, right? It's supposed to be there just in case something happens. So what we'll have to do is we'll fail all this stuff over a little bit later. But once we do that, we'll have to manually fail it all back. And I'll walk you through how to do that. So for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and put this video on pause, and we'll be back shortly to go through the failover. All right, so we've had a successful config sync, and now I'm on the secondary controller here. You see 192.168.121. Right away, you see the config restore starts, and then it goes into maintenance mode. So it's still restoring. This is about 6 minutes ago, according to my clock. Once it's done restoring, we'll resume the video, but I wanted to show you what actually happens right away. So keep in mind, this is definitely different than you would see in the active standby, because the active standby won't actually do that. It doesn't restore until the failover occurs. So we'll get back to this once we get the restore done. All right, so the restore succeeded. See right there. And it took about just a little under 15 minutes, if you look at the timestamps here. So not too bad, keeping in mind that every time it pushes the config, it's going to restore it right away. So doing it nightly may not be advised, may not be needed. You may only need to do it once a week, once a month, whatever. Regardless, something to consider. So you'll notice too, again, we are on this backup controller. You'll see it says the AP is offline. All my zones and domains and things are here. Let's go look at the cluster settings here. So you'll see it's already seeded the data planes. They're disconnected, obviously, because they are on the primary currently, but they will go over in the event of a failover. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go into my VMware environment and go ahead and shut down. Well, I'm not going to shut down. I'm going to do what I did in the last video, which is actually unplug, quote unquote, the VM from the network. And we'll kind of see how long it's going to take for it to fail over, which should be just a few minutes relative to the standby. Again, keeping in mind that we will address that in the future. But if we'll go in here, uncheck the connect box, hit save. Go ahead and put the video on pause because it's going to take a few minutes to fail over, but we'll get an idea. It's 2:01 Mountain Standard Time at the time of me hitting this, and we'll bring it back up when she's ready and let you know how long it took to fail over. All right, let's get this party started. So about 4 minutes in, I think I said it was 2:01 Mountain Standard Time when it failed over, or when I unplugged the virtual Ethernet cable, if you will. Within 4 minutes, the APs, or AP in my case, had failed to the new controller. Also, if we go and look at cluster here, you will see that the data planes also started to fail over. So one is completely up, the other one will be up here just in a moment. But yeah, so a bit of a faster failover time there, though again, this will be addressed in a future update for active standby. But let's go look, like we did in the last video, let's go look at the licenses here. So if you recall seeing that last video, you know, it had the HA licenses, but then you would see where the other licenses had failed over, quote unquote, to the other machine. In this case, you don't see that, right? These are all the nodes, or all these licenses, I should say, are bound to this node. So keep in mind, if you're going to fail over between clusters, and you can have up to 3 followers for 1 leader, they all need to have the same licensing. So if you want the same functionality, I should say. So let's go ahead and let's bring this guy back online. Let's fail things back so I can give you an idea of kind of what that looks like. All right, so we're going to go ahead and reconnect this cable. Hit save there. Now we do need to, this will come up pretty quickly, but we need to give it just a couple minutes at least so that the other guys can kind of see that it's back online. But while that guy is kind of reloading there, or I should say the screen is loading, it never actually went down. So what we'll do, if we go to access points here, now in my case, this is based on some, this Wellnest IO is based on some training we were doing internally. And so we had these different domains, partner domain zones, etc. In my case, this is the only zone that I have that I need to move, because this will be a zone by zone process. So what I'll do to move the AP, I will go to more here and switch over clusters. Now you'll see which cluster do I want to send it to. So there's predefined or there's custom. In my case, I only have this other one, so it makes it a little simpler. So you can just go ahead and hit OK here. If you don't want to, you can delete it. It's up to you. So we'll just hit OK to go ahead and trigger this guy. So this guy will start to fail over. Now, we have to do the same thing on the actual data planes as well. Again, it's not this concept of failing them back. I mean, I guess we could do the same thing with VMware, and we could go and unplug for this guy too, because they're technically both running on VMware. There's just 2 different instances in my lab. But if you just simply click it, hit more, once again, we're going to hit switch over cluster, hit yes for this guy, and we'll do the same for this. You could have just highlighted both, but you know, why not? It's more fun to do this. So, all right, so we've told those guys to move over here. So let's go to this smart zone. Let's see where our access point stands right now, if it's failed back just yet. Usually it's pretty quick in my testing that I've seen. Yeah, so see, this guy's already back online. And let's look at the data planes here. and see where they stand, if they're back on yet or not. And yep, coming right back up. So about a minute or two on the data plane. The AP was more or less instantaneous. So yeah, that's going to be the conclusion of my video on active-active clustering in the Smartzone. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good one.